Hello everybody and welcome to this video. In today's video we'll be looking at paper 1 question 3 and how to get full marks as well as giving you the inside scoop from the AQA exam board. The key skills for question 3 is the analysis of structure. You'll be awarded marks for choosing some examples of structural features, writing about their effects, using accurate subject terminology to enhance your response and explaining the effects on the reader. This question will assess the second part of AO2, Assessment Objective 2, where you are expected to explain, comment on and analyse how writers use structure to achieve effects and influence readers using relevant subject terminology to support your view. Question 3 will test your ability to analyse how writers use structure to achieve effects and will look something like this. You now need to think about the whole source. How does the writer use structure to interest you as a reader? The exam board also provides bullet points as a helpful reminder of the sort of features that you can use in order to build your response. However, please note the word could, as there is no requirement to cover all 3 bullet points as they are just a guide. Remember, you'll be credited for any worthy response that addresses the AO2. So what does AO2 mean? Let's have a look at the command words in more detail. As you can see, on the left part of the screen is the question broken into sections. On the right hand side of the screen, you will see an explanation as to what the question is asking you. So, you can see the first part of the question states you now need to think about the whole of the source. This part of the question will stay consistent each year, and it reminds you to reference the whole source. The fact that they say the whole source means that you cannot just pick examples from the first part of the source or one section of the source. It means that you need to pick points from a range of places, i.e. from the start or beginning, the middle and the end. The question will always tell you as well as where the extract has come from, i.e. this text is from the beginning of the novel or the middle of the novel or the end of the novel. This part of the question provides you with some context as to where the source has been taken out from the short story. Remember, the unseen extract will always be a piece of fiction. The question then goes on to say, how has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? Remember, this part of the question will always stay consistent each year. The fact that it says to interest you as a reader shows that or tells you that you need to pick structural features that you think the writer has purposely done in order to captivate the reader's attention. Additionally, the word interest reminds you to always consider the effects on the reader. So for example, why has the writer used foreshadowing? Lastly, the exam board will have these 3 bullet points, which once again will stay consistent each year. So, they will say what the writer focuses your attention at the beginning, how and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops, and any other structural features that interest you. Remember, these 3 bullet points are just a guide, and therefore you do not need to address all 3. I would like to draw your attention to the words how and why. When picking structural features, you must explain how the writer has used that structural feature and why the writer has used it, in particular linking it always back to the effect on the reader. So what do the examiners expect from you? They will expect all responses to be true and drawn from different parts of the text, i.e. beginning, middle and end. To choose some examples of structure, to write about the effects of your selected examples, and to use accurate subject terminology to enhance your response. Remember, your response cannot be driven by subject terminology. Please note, however, it is the quality of your analysis that is credited. Where subject terminology is used, it is how well you make use of it to improve the quality of your response. The use of subject terminology should not be the driving force of your answer. It should enhance your comment or your analysis. And therefore, you need to explain why the writer has used that particular feature and what is the effect on the reader. So what did we learn from the 2017 summer exams. AQA have said the reasons behind students not attaining full marks of this question is because they overcomplicated the question, so there was a reliance on subject terminology, or they used high-level literary or narrative theories which many did not really understand and could not really apply it to the text. They identified and labelled structural features such as at the beginning, in the middle and at the end, and then they just discussed the content of what was happening in the story at those points. In other words, they wrote a summary. They analysed language instead of structure. Remember, there are no marks awarded for analysing language features in this question. They offered a basic and generic comment, i.e., it makes us want to read on or it attracts our attention, which could apply to most examples of structure as well as language features for question 2. And therefore, these type of comments are simple comments, worthy only of level 1. Level 1 is 1 to 2 marks out of 8. Lastly, they identified features such as tone, setting, narrative perspective, dialogue, without explaining any shifts or changes in these features as the source developed, or the significance of their placement. So how do we avoid these common mistakes that the 2017 Year 11 cohort made? Here are my top tips on how to get full marks on this question. First of all, you need to plan. You need to read the question and highlight the key words. So for example, the word whole to remind you to select a range of examples from the text. The word structure to remind you to only look at structural features. The word interest and the reader to remind you to constantly link it back to the effects on the reader. And then you could possibly highlight some of the wording from the 3 bullet points, i.e. the beginning, to make sure to remind you, should you need to, look at how the writer uses a structural feature at the beginning to interest you as a reader. The words how and why to remind you that you need to explain how the writer's doing something and why the writer's doing it, and any other structural feature that interests you. You then need to highlight and annotate your extract. By highlighting and annotating your extract, you've almost created a mini plan, and therefore all you're doing is skimming and scamming your highlighted parts or points and then developing them into a petal paragraph. I would suggest writing a minimum of 2 paragraphs. Now, petal stands for point, evidence, technique, analysis, link. Additionally, you need to make sure you don't overcomplicate this question. All you have to do is consider where something's happening in the text, i.e. the beginning, middle, end, what is happening at the beginning, middle and end, and why is it happening at the beginning, middle or end. Additionally, you need to think about how does reading this at this point add to your understanding of the whole text, and how does it interest you as a reader. So if the writer is using foreboding or foreshadowing at the start, why are they using it, and how is that going to captivate and interest the reader? You should try to consider the bullet points, as that will help you answer the question. So use the bullet points in order to consider the writer's sequencing, structural shifts and movement through the text and the reason behind them. Use subject terminology. Remember, it needs to be structural features. However, you still need to remember that you will not be credited for naming a feature unless you can explain the effects. So explain why the writers used it. Additionally, you may find it easier or useful to use phrases such as at the start, immediately after, then, next, in the middle, later on, before, etc. However, when using these specific words, consider what is happening at this point and the why. Always think about what, why, how. The exam board said the most able students at level 4, so level 4 is your 7 and 8 marks out of 8, will demonstrate a detailed analysis of the writer's choices of structural features. So they have looked at foreshadowing, foreboding, the cyclical plot, and explained why the writers used it, how the writer has used it, where the writer has used it in the text, and the effect on the reader. They also gave an overview of the source's structure before then focusing on one or two specific examples. Let's look at this model paragraph taken from the AQA exam board. This has been taken from the specimen paper, which you can find on the AQA website. I will leave a link down below. This paragraph has been taken out of the mark scheme under level 4. Level 4 is a 7 or 8 mark. Remember, this is not a full essay, this is just a guide as to what roughly a level 4 piece of work would look like. So here we go. The text about a journey is structured to also take the reader on a journey, from the general to the specific, from the outside to the inside, from the weather through the coach, the driver and horses to the passengers. So you can see here, this part, this candidate has analysed and looked at the structure of the text as a whole. There is also a constant reminder of the weather which permeates each part, the little drips of rain that come through the roof, and later the rain oozed through the cracks in the roof on Mary's shoulder. So the reader is constantly made wet and uncomfortable, just like the passengers. You can see here they've decided to look at the repetition or the motive of the weather. So looking at the constant reminder of the weather. Additionally, they have embedded their quotations nice and neatly into their sentence, and therefore it fits grammatically. You can see that their quotations are short, and remember the example do not want long quotations. Short quotations are just fine. Then they link their point back to the reader and explain why the writer has used this feature, the feature of the constant repetition of the rain. What is the effect on the reader? And they have said it makes us feel wet and uncomfortable, just like the passengers. Around the middle of the extract, so they're zooming in on a particular point, so as the extract develops, the outside and the inside are made to coincide when the old man opens the window. This also moves the focus of the reader to inside the coach. So once again, they've linked it back to the reader and the fact that there's a shift. The focus point has shifted from the outside to the inside. And that's a structural effect that the writer has done on purpose. The text then narrows down to take the reader from the countryside of Cornwall, the wide granite sky, and the evening which closes upon the hills, to the inside of Mary Yellen's head as she contemplates the weather and the hopes for a momentary trace of blue heaven. So you can see here what the candidate has done is they've talked about the writer narrowing down, so using that zooming in or cinematic techniques, the effect on the reader and the shifts in the narrative structure, the fact that it shifts from the countryside of Cornwall to what's inside, what Mary's internal thoughts. Additionally, they've got a range of quotations nice and neatly embedded into their paragraph. As you can see, this particular paragraph, the reason why the exam would put it into a level 4 is because, first of all, they look at the extract as a whole and they give a general overview of the structure of the text, the fact that it's a journey that takes us from outside to inside. Additionally, they've looked at different structural features. They've looked at the repetition of the weather, the fact that in the middle of the extract we go from outside to inside, and the fact that there's a shift from the countryside of Cornwall to Mary's internal thoughts. Lastly, you can see there's a range of really short and relevant quotations which are embedded nice and neatly into their essay or paragraph, as well as constantly linking it back to the reader. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel before you leave. If you found this video helpful and would like more tutorials, then please press the like button and leave a comment down below. Until next time, goodbye.